Hello, folks. Welcome to the second segment of the Whitfield Analysis. I am your host, Sam Whitfield. In this segment, I will be talking to Mr. Isaiah Pyritz, who is a fellow young conservative. He and I have both written for numerous blog sites. We contributed to the same blog, Calgary Nation, for a while. That's where we originally met. I left to start Next Gen Conservative, but Isaiah and I still kept in contact. Now, Isaiah and I, we've kept in touch throughout this election cycle, and he and I have had a couple disagreements. When I was supporting Marco Rubio for the presidency, Isaiah was very critical of me, and he had his reasons for not supporting Marco Rubio, which I thought were valid. Many people who listen to my show and who are fans of mine thought that Isaiah was being a little too critical of me. They thought he was insulting me. I personally never thought Isaiah was insulting me. He and I have been very good associates and even friends in the world of politics. So I figured I would invite Isaiah onto the program to hear his side on Marco Rubio, and that was about 2 weeks ago. Then Marco Rubio dropped out of the race, and Isaiah and I still wanted to talk about the election in general, because he and I have both pretty much decided that the movement known as Never Trump, that hashtag, Isaiah and I both think that movement is pretty much faulty. We think it's a terrible idea, both of us do. We have some different viewpoints on why that is, and we also have some similar viewpoints. But we decided to go ahead and do the interview. I love Isaiah as a political commentator and as a friend. I think he's a great guy. He and I both have very unique and interesting perspectives, and I think you guys will enjoy this interview. It's a little bit long. It's 1 hour and 5 minutes total, which is why I am not broadcasting live. We just decided it would be better to do this pre-recorded. But anyway, here is my interview with Isaiah Pyritz on the Whitfield Analysis. I hope you enjoy the interview, and sit back and relax and hunker down for the next 1 hour and 5 minutes. Alright, let's talk to Isaiah, shall we? Alright, folks, welcome back to the Whitfield Analysis. Joining me right now is Isaiah Pyritz, who is a young conservative blogger, contributor, and all-around great guy. Now, when we initially talked about doing this interview, Marco Rubio was still in the race. Isaiah was vehemently opposed to Marco Rubio running for president. I was totally in favor of Marco Rubio running for president, and a couple of people on my side were like, well, why is Isaiah being so mean to the Rubio supporters? I didn't think Isaiah was being mean at all, but I wanted to have him on the show to talk a little bit about Rubio, and then once Rubio dropped out, I still wanted to have Isaiah on to talk about the campaign in general, and obviously I think we'll still talk a little bit about Rubio, but right now I want to welcome Isaiah Pyritz to the program. So Isaiah, welcome, and it's great to have you on the program.
Well, thank you, Sam. It's an honor to be here. I mean, it's great to, get on here and to talk to other young conservatives who are just ready to take the country back, and I think it all starts here, and, you are one of the people that I know that are a big contributor to, young conservatism. And I think, that you will go leaps and bounds farther than some of the people that have been in politics as a young conservative and have abused that as a way to make themselves known for personal gain and I mean they know who they are, but you're doing it.
Yes, CJ Pearson.
Yes, we all know him. I mean he's the Mr. There's no way you go from being on Ted Cruz's campaign to Bernie Sanders' campaign, but I would like to try to stay positive mostly this show because I don't want the people to get the vibe that I'm negative. It's just this election is so crucial, and I feel like that if we get it wrong, then this will have consequences that probably will not be undone for decades.
Right. I agree. I agree with you, man. And look, I'm kind of in the same boat as you are. Like a lot of people, it's funny because I am not an asshole, and neither are you. But I've recently been accused by some people who I thought were, friends of mine of being a jerk because I'm just so focused on beating Hillary, no matter what the cost is. And a lot of people are like, well, don't you want to preserve conservatism? And, the truth of the matter is I do, but I think we're at this is such a crucial election. And I think the Republican Party we've taken what, in my opinion, should have been a straightforward election. Like, this should have been an easy win for us. And somehow, I don't know if I'm the only one that feels this way, but somehow we've taken what should have been an easy election for us to win. And over the past 6 or 7 months, we've somehow made it overly complex to where we're now stuck between a rock and a hard place, and we may not win at all.
Yeah, and I think part of the reason that is the Republican Party has spent so much time, effort, and energy focusing on how to stop Trump instead of focusing on how to stop Hillary and how to win the White House in 2016. I mean, now we're talking about brokered conventions, contested conventions. We're talking about all sorts of things because this Republican establishment, they're not focused on beating Hillary Clinton. They're focused on beating Donald Trump. And if Ted Cruz was in the spot Donald Trump was in it, they would be doing the exact same thing. This is not that they want Ted Cruz. They're saying that they just want to go to a brokered convention because they want to put who they want in there. I forgot who his name was, but he sits on the rules committee for the RNC. He said it himself. The voters don't get to pick. He said that's a misconception. They do not get to pick the nominee. He said the party picks, and I think that is. I mean, you're sending a corrupt message, and if it comes down to that, if Ted Cruz and Donald Trump, neither of them are the nominee, then the Republican Party needs to go the way of the Whig Party, and it needs to die off because it's becoming just as undemocratic as the leftist progressive Democratic Party. And it makes us no better. It makes us just as corrupt, if not worse. I mean, you look at what's happened to Bernie Sanders in the very beginning. He was doing really well, but he was getting, substantially less delegates than Hillary Clinton. That's corruption at the max. Not that I like Bernie Sanders. I can't stand him. He's an avowed socialist. But what we need true representation, and that if it's Donald Trump that the Republicans want, and Ted Cruz, then that's who they should get. It should not be a brokered convention where they try to, push in Paul Ryan or they try to push in, somebody said today, I'm not going to say who, but they said, a Kasich Rubio ticket. That is not who we are as a party to undemocratically do that. And it's not who we are as a nation to say we're just going to reject the will of the voters and put in who a bunch of party bosses say we should. We need to put in who the people want. And I think that's what Donald Trump has done. He's got so many people to cross over from, Democratic lines, and he's gotten a bunch of independent voters, a bunch of people who've never voted before. And it's not that I like Donald Trump, I'm just part of that cult, because I will admit there is a group of people that follow Donald Trump, just as there is with almost any group of energetic supporters. that will support them blindly. But I
Right.
acknowledge the fact that Donald Trump is doing something. He's touching a nerve within the Republican Party. He's touching a nerve within America. And he's saying, look, we are going to lose our nation if we do not do something about trade, immigration, the national debt. And Ted Cruz is doing the same thing. Now, I would like to take some time to go back on Marco Rubio. I do owe you an apology because I was very aggressive about that. I was not trying to be rude, but I was very upset because I had saw a different Rubio. When Rubio got on the stage after Jeb Bush dropped out, that was a lot different, much different tone, different Rubio than the Rubio we had seen before. We had saw a unifying Rubio who was talking about, uniting the Republican Party behind conservatism as a Reaganist party. And then we had saw, him talking about hands and stuff. And I just said, he's becoming establishment because, especially with all the endorsements, I was thinking, maybe this was just a plot. And I was getting very, suspicious. And that's how I've always been. I'm always thinking the establishment is plotting. And that's a good way to think, in my opinion. So I got very anti-Rubio. I said, look, they failed with Jeb Bush. They failed with all their other candidates. Maybe they're going to try to throw in a Hail Mary with Rubio, who has his morals, but will still somewhat have an ear open to the establishment. I think I think their time is over. I think we need somebody who listens to us. And I thought Rubio listened to the people, but I thought that he also wanted to play both sides. And that's why I gave the Rubio people a hard time. Now, the people,
Well,
go ahead.
apology accepted. I do want to, thank you for that. And I think I came back, harsh on my end. So, apologies to you as
Oh no,
well.
you don't owe me an apology at all. I can be very rude. I mean, you can ask some of the people, but it's more of a rudeness, not because I'm not getting my way, because this is not about me. This is not about you. This is about America, and I get frustrated because I say, this is the country that we are going to inherit. If we literally say never Trump, and we say, okay, if Trump is the nominee, we will not go out there and vote. That was almost the same identical problem we had with Mitt Romney in 2012. The conservatives said, we're staying home and we're not going to vote because,
Yep.
and I mean, that's the thing. Now, I do think Donald Trump will get a tremendous amount of more support than Mitt Romney will. I mean, we even saw in Massachusetts that he did at the primary there, but I think that that's a big problem. Now, the same people from 2012 that were saying, this is our nominee, you got to support him no matter what, are the same people now saying, oh, we're not supporting Trump. See, it's a two-way street with them. I mean,
Yeah.
they you remember when they wanted everybody to do that loyalty pledge?
Yeah.
Okay, and now all of a sudden, I remember all the people who are on social media. I'm not going to name them. You know who they are that I argue with frequently. They were saying, take the pledge, Donald. He should just take the pledge. Take the pledge. Now all of a sudden, these people are like, well, we're not sure if we're going to support him. One specific person said that they're going to vote, Constitution Party. You know who he is. Me and him getting frequent arguments.
Yeah.
He doesn't exactly have a profile picture of himself, but you know who he is. He's a great guy. He's a great guy, and he's very intelligent when it comes to the political arena. Just an overall smart guy. But I think his views are something of what the old guard has in mind, and I think it's time for a refreshing amount of conservatism. And say what you want about Donald Trump, he's not liberal populist. He says what he feels, and I would rather take somebody who is saying that they're a conservative over somebody like Hillary Clinton who is saying that they are a socialist or a progressive. I want to believe the guy who says he's a conservative, and I'm going to support him in the general election no matter what. And I'm not going to hand over our country and 3 to 4 Supreme Court justices to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, who I don't want to get into I guess when it comes to Hillary, I mean, I guess kind of venturing into conspiracy theory land is unavoidable with her just because there are so many conspiracies surrounding the Clintons. But, Right. In fact, I tend to argue with a lot of the same people that you argue with too. And I'm not going to name specific people, but the one group of people that are really kind of irritating me right now, specifically. I'm not going to name names, but these people are Rand Paul supporters, avidly.
Oh yeah.
And the Rand Paul supporters drove me crazy because the week that Rand Paul dropped out, they were sad and they were disappointed. And I understand that on like the first day, because when Rubio dropped out, I was disappointed. But the way some of these people were carrying on, you would have thought that Rand Paul had like gotten shot or died tragically. Like,
oh yeah.
I'm not even joking. Just like these people are out and out mourning, and some of them went so far as to say like, I can't sleep because I'm so depressed that Rand Paul dropped out. And I said, okay, if you're at the point where you physically can't eat and you physically can't sleep because you're that disappointed that Rand Paul dropped out, I've said, I'm sorry to say, but you have a bit of a problem. And
Yeah.
I think that's the case with any candidate.
I was team Rand when he, before any of this started. I was like, because I was a big supporter of his dad in 2012, because I just wanted somebody who told the truth and who I felt was just, anti-establishment. That's how I've always thought, anti-establishment. Right. So, I mean, I had this, I had this fever. I mean, Paul bought fever almost, we were going everywhere. I was going to, the Southern Republican convention. I met Ron Paul. I met Rand. I can honestly say, out of the movements and all that Ron Paul definitely exceeded Rand by probably 10 times, just based on pure substance and based on pure grassroots, because there was just something with Rand that I guess didn't click with his campaign, but his dad did so much better. And I think his dad, was a lot purer. But, regardless of that, to what you're saying is, yeah, there are, there are going to be the hardcore people. And I'm not saying vote for Trump, enthusiastically if he's the nominee, or vote for Cruz, because at this point, as I said, either one of them would be, infinitely better than Hillary Clinton or Bernie Sanders. Right. But what I'm saying is, go to the polls and vote. Vote for whoever the nominee is. And, if you don't want it to be Trump, vote for Cruz. But do not take away the rights of the people who have already voted, the millions of people who already voted, and say, we're going to put somebody like Paul Ryan up as the nominee, because I guarantee you, if they do that, if they nominate somebody other than Donald Trump or Ted Cruz, the Republican Party will lose that election in a landslide, and it will probably die off.
Yeah, I completely agree. Let me ask you this, because this is a curious argument that I've heard from a lot of Never Trump people, and it kind of makes sense, but I still have big issues with it. And that's this whole notion that it's better for us to lose to Hillary because Trump's not a conservative anyway. And if Hillary wins, we can still blame all of our problems on Hillary. And to me, that kind of seems, I don't like that, because then the Republican Party is doing exactly what the Democrats did 8 years ago, which is just blame everything on Bush. And
Sam, I just want to say something about that there. That bothers me so much. Look, what kind of country do you want, to live your life in? What kind of country do you want your kids, I mean, if you're older, to grow up in? What kind of country? Because with Hillary Clinton, we are $19 trillion in debt. And with Hillary Clinton, that will not be fixed anytime soon. It will just progress and progress and progress. And eventually, we're going to have to pay the piper. And eventually, we're going to be in the position of Greece. This cannot go on forever. This status quo of, us just, taking out debt, spending money, going around policing the world. It cannot stay like that forever. We need somebody to turn that around, and we can't just say we'll give the election to Hillary Clinton here and pretty much just hope she doesn't do too bad in hopes of reclaiming it 4 years from now or 8 years from now. We have to act now. This is our last chance. And I know people say, well, they always say that every election. Well, this is our last chance. We are $19 trillion in debt. We are losing respect around the world. Russia is advancing. China is advancing. If you look at China, the South China Sea, Russia, and Ukraine, we are losing our place in the world, losing our voice in the world. And eventually when that debt, is called, we're going to be in so much trouble. And people don't realize that we need somebody in there who will negotiate on behalf of the American people, not on Wall Street or the special interest or the unions. We need somebody, and I think Donald Trump or Ted Cruz or heck, even Marco Rubio could have done that. But the thing is, we cannot just say we're going to throw the election to Hillary. We can't do that. As much as I despised Jeb Bush and claimed I would not vote for Jeb Bush, I would have held my nose and voted for him if he was the nominee because I would have known what we would have gotten with Hillary Clinton. We cannot afford to throw this election away. There's 3 to 4 Supreme Court justice spots on the line if we do that, and that will have effects that go on for decades and decades.
Yeah. And the other thing too is this whole notion that, well, it's important for us to preserve the conservative movement as it is, and Trump doesn't exemplify what Ronald Reagan was as a conservative. Now, I love Ronald Reagan, and I know you do too, but I was thinking about a couple of things in regards to this whole philosophy of Reagan conservatism, and I know this is going to sound like blasphemy, but when you think about it, okay, the Reagan Revolution took place in the 1980s. It's 2015, and we're no longer in a Cold War. We're no longer in a drug war. Well, we kind of are, but we're not to the level we were in the 80s. The culture has changed, the technology has changed, and I get that people love Reagan. I understand that, but Reagan conservatism I don't believe that it's going to solve 21st century American problems. And I have a couple of people who are Democrats who I'm friends with. I don't always agree with them, but one of my more liberal friends did make a point, which is that the Republicans are, for the most part, the conservative movement is so stuck on Reagan that they've forgotten about, the fact that we're living in 2015 America. And,
yeah. And if you want to boil it down, Sam, Reagan was not perfect. I mean, and the thing is, that's a problem that the Republicans make. Ronald Reagan was a phenomenal president, probably one of the best presidents in modern times. But he was not perfect, and I know the Republicans put him on the pedestal, and he rightfully deserves it. But he's not the god of conservatism. He is a well-known figure in conservatism. But Ronald Reagan was known because of his approach, his conservative approach for the problems of that time. We need somebody in there who will take the conservative approach to things of this time. And I think it is conservative. Donald Trump's plan on trade would be conservative to say we're going to put the American workers first. That's not at all a leftist agenda. It's been characterized as that, but I think that's an American agenda to say we want to put Americans first, and it shouldn't be about left or right. I think that Ronald Reagan was conservative in the aspects for his time, and he's conservative now, looking at the spectrum. But he had conservative solutions for those problems then. We have our own challenges now. For example, the debt and deficit wasn't a bigger problem as it is now, or as it was then than it is now. For example, Reagan spent a lot, but he spent wisely. He spent, making sure that we took down the Soviets in the Cold War. If you ever, look at a lot of his strategies, you remember what he did with the Star Wars program, the whole theory that caused the Soviets, to just enter collapse. he was a genius, but we should use a lot of his methods, but we have unique problems of this century and of this generation that needs solving by somebody that has insight and wisdom for the problems that we have now. And I think that
Right.
Ronald Reagan was extremely unique in the aspect of that time. And we need somebody extremely unique for this time. We don't need to always try to copy, somebody. We need to have a unique president. We need to have one that's unique and knows what they're doing. I think Ronald Reagan did, a wonderful job. And I think that we can nominate somebody who can do just as good of a job. I'm not saying Donald Trump's the next Ronald Reagan, or I don't think Ted Cruz is, but I think that they can do just as good if they act on the policies at the right time, with the right people surrounding them. We can create an American revolution in a peaceful way that is for the American people, that gets the working class moving again, and just keeps America the strong nation that we know.
Right. I completely agree with you. More than that, though, I would also say that the in regards to finding the next Reagan, I mean, I think that's pretty much an impossible thing. There was only one Ronald Reagan, just like there was only one JFK, just like there was only one George Washington. And I think that this whole notion that, this is the one thing that bugs me about Ted Cruz, is that, he's kind of been billed as the next Ronald Reagan. And for people like us who were either, I mean, it's not even in our age group. Anyone who was actually born in the 80s, like born in the late 80s, they don't, even if they were born during Reagan's presidency, a lot of the younger people in their 30s now don't even really remember the Reagan era because they were too young.
Yeah.
And so I think it's, I think that's really kind of the real disconnect is, Ted Cruz kind of, markets himself as the next Ronald Reagan, but there's this whole, generation, actually more like two generations now, who are kind of like, okay, that's cool, but none of us were around, for the Reagan era, so we don't really know what, how to interpret that.
Yeah. And Ted Cruz, the problem I think with Ted Cruz, he has, I agree with him probably on nearly everything on his platform. But what I disagree with is his obstructionism and his campaign tactics. I think, when he gets up there and tells Donald Trump about, how Donald Trump's had violence at his rallies, apparently. And he says it all starts at the top, Donald. Well, what about all of this stuff that has been going on within Ted Cruz's campaign that Ted Cruz says he didn't know about? If he's going to tell Donald Trump it all starts at the top, he needs to own up and say, yeah, it started at the top for my campaign too. Ronald Reagan said, not to speak ill of another Republican. And Ted Cruz, every time the TV comes, you see the TV on, or Ted Cruz on the TV, Donald Trump's congratulating Ted Cruz, and yeah, he'll go after him a lot, but mostly after, the states vote on something, he'll say, we called Ted and, congratulated him and, wish him the best. And then you see Ted Cruz get on there, we beat Donald Trump. Donald Trump's liberal policy, and it's just like, that is not Reaganist. That's not. If he's aiming to be the next Ronald Reagan, he's failing. What we need is to stop aiming to be Reagan, and let's aim to fix the country. Whether it takes, electing Donald Trump or it takes electing Ted Cruz, let's fix the country and stop trying to say we want to be the Reagan conservatives. We can win and fix the country and maintain conservatism with Donald Trump. For example, we've had a lot of nominees that weren't conservative, but we've had conservatism and conservative candidates come after. For example, you look at Gerald Ford. I mean, he wasn't exactly, and Richard Nixon and Gerald Ford, they weren't exactly the most conservative candidates. But what came after them, If you our next Republican president was Ronald Reagan. So
Right.
conservatism does not stop if Donald Trump's the president, regardless if you think he's a conservative or not. I believe he's a conservative. I believe he's a different type of conservative. I believe he's a moderate conservative. But I believe that there will always be conservative presidents after the ones we have now that are just as conservative. I don't believe conservatism stops just because we have a president, that's the leader of our party that is not exactly the most conservative. Just like I believe the Democrats can nominate somebody that's moderate. I don't see it happening, but I believe that in the future that they can nominate somebody that's more of a blue dog. But I think for the most part, blue dog Democrats are dying out. It's just
Yeah. Yeah, I agree.
But yeah, conservatism does not die if Donald Trump's the nominee because, regardless, when we've had moderate nominees and moderate presidents that were Republicans, we've had conservatives come after them. We've had, for example, just look at Barry Goldwater. He lost tremendously to Lyndon B. Johnson, and he was a conservative. Sometimes conservatives aren't going to win, but the fact is that it just has to do with who's elected. The whole notion that we're going to just die off as conservative is just wrong. It's not true. We need to worry about our country dying off and not worry about a movement dying off.
Right. Yeah, that's what it really boils down to. And the other thing from the Never Trump people is, well, Trump is going to forcefully, alter the definition of conservatism. And it's like, it's not really the president's, to me at least, it's not the president's job to define conservatism, or to shape conservatism. That's more the job of commentators and ordinary citizens like, you, me, Matt Dallas, a couple of other people, who we know on Facebook. That's the people's job to define the movement. And, I think this idea that, if Trump wins, he's going to forever, change the definition of conservatism. I'm like, he'll only do that if you let him do that. I don't even think that's his big intention.
I don't believe Trump will even be a two-term president. I believe he wants to get in there, fix what's wrong, and then I believe he wants to go back to his business. I believe that's just the kind of guy he is. I mean, his ex-butler said, he's a very picky person. He sleeps 3 hours and he's a workaholic. I believe he'll get in there. I believe he's running because, I believe he's a greedy person. I do. But I believe that that's good in this case. He sees that his companies and everything he's worked so hard for is in jeopardy, and he wants to fix that. And I believe that Trump can get in there. I just want to, I don't know how much time you have left, but I want to finish you off with this. I believe it was Abraham Lincoln that said, to see how a man will govern or to see how a man will lead, first look at the people he appoints or he surrounds himself with. And I don't know if that was Lincoln or somebody else, but I think after hearing Trump say he was going to name Sessions to Homeland Security, and then I'm starting to hear rumors that Christie's going to be the Attorney General, which he would be a great Attorney General. If he's surrounding himself with those types of conservatives and those types of Republicans, then why worry that he's not going to take care of conservatism?
Right. I mean, and even with Ben Carson, and by the way, we're totally good on time, man. If you want to keep on talking, yeah. I mean, we've got this thing could go on for an hour completely. And the other thing is, we might do an extended, web version, an extended version too. But anyway, also Ben Carson, I guess is in talks with him for, they don't know exactly what yet, but a lot of people are assuming that he's going to be Surgeon General and, really take care of Obamacare. And I would have no problem with, Ben Carson being Surgeon General. I actually think that's a little bit better for Ben Carson, because than being president, because that really goes into Carson's area of expertise, which is the medical field.
Yeah. So from what I have heard, this is what the cabinet will look like. Just because of what Trump has insinuated. Christie as the Attorney General, Sessions for the immigration or Homeland Security, whichever one that is, I guess, decided for. Now, from what I've heard, Sarah Palin, something to do with Department of Energy, which I think would be, great because she knows all about that, being the governor of Alaska. She knows
Right.
about the oil reserves, all sorts of, just utilizing American energy. And he said that Ben Carson wanted to do something with regards to education. Ben Carson is against Common Core, so if he named him Department of Education, Secretary of Education, then I think that would be really good. And I think having a good Christian man as the leader of education, the Secretary of Education, overseeing everything, I think that would be good going back, with regards to instilling morals back into the schools, because I think right now it's a lot of our problems is a lack of morals, and I think a lot of that's from the public school system, and I think it's just because there's poor oversight, and I think somebody like Ben Carson, like they were talking about, would be great at that, and I think Surgeon General would be something that he's probably better with, but that's my opinion. I think that he can surround himself with the best people. And I think that's what Trump's ability is. I don't think Trump will, honestly, as successful as he's been, go in there and just completely screw everything up. That is just not his nature. I mean,
Right.
he's not going to. Trump's not going to go in there and just say, okay, I'm doing this, this, and this. I think that's what the media wants people to think, because the establishment is in absolute panic mode now. Okay, when you have Alex Jones, a conspiracy theorist, backing you, that thinks there's a conspiracy theory about everything, that's the right person, because that guy is literally the anti-establishment guy. I mean,
Yeah.
this guy's like, I mean, if you've listened to Alex Jones, you know that. I mean, he's talking about fluoride in the waters and making frogs gay and all that. And if he's sitting there and says, "Oh, the CIA is trying to come after Trump and all that," you know that that's your guy.
I don't know. I don't know if you've ever heard of it. I can't do the voice anymore because it honestly hurts when I try to do it. I've strained my vocal cords a couple times, but I actually used to parody Alex Jones. And when I saw the video of Alex Jones endorsing Trump, I was like, wait, is this a parody? Like, I had to go to a couple of different places to see it, just because I was like, I was thinking, wow, I was thinking like along the lines of, well, Trump's a multi-billionaire, so Alex Jones would obviously be against him because most billionaires are part of the Illuminati or whatever. But no, I think, and I think that Trump is really. One of the other things is really kind of interesting to me is this whole idea that Trump's language is somehow bad, and that he's inciting all this hate from people. And it's like, I think really what Trump's reaction, I think ultimately, well, let me ask you first, what do you think caused the Trump revolution, do you think?
I honestly don't. It had nothing to do with his speech that he gave when he first announced. It had to do with how the media reacted to it, and the people saw that and said, "This is the guy we want. We are sick and tired of people that speak their mind getting beat up on." So I think the people naturally, and you saw in the polls, aligned with Trump. Had the media just played his announcement speech and said, what do you, that's Trump's in the race now and not beat up on Trump, then he wouldn't have gotten very far, I don't think. But I think the fact that they gave him so much attention and they tried to make him look stupid, the American people said, he's right. We're losing on the border, we're losing on trade, and you're trying to silence him and be politically correct, and he's not going to do that. We're going to vote for him, no matter whether we agree with him on this, or this. I disagree with Donald Trump on about 40 to 30% of his platform, but I support Donald Trump. I support whoever the nominee is, but I support Donald Trump because he's not beholden to anybody, and he's not going to change his mind because you're offended or somebody over here doesn't like what he has to say.
Well, and I agree. I agree with you. I'm actually in the middle of writing an article about this. It's very interesting because like a lot of people are saying, oh well, see, the left is trying to make the narrative that Donald Trump is the white man's reaction, to Barack Obama. That's obviously not true because, like, I know a ton of black people and Hispanic people, by the way, who love Trump. But more than that, I think if there were one term to just describe Trump's rise, it would be anti-political. It would be anti-political correctness. I think when it all comes down to a lot of the problems that I think this country faces is because of political correctness. I think, in regards to ISIS, everyone, even the left, well, I shouldn't say the left, even the liberals, who I know, because there is a difference between the liberals and the left, I think. Even the liberals that I know that, there's a problem with Islamic terror. I think people know that there's a problem with illegal immigrants, but this whole thing of political correctness and, hatred towards the cops, I think political correctness is what has gotten us into this mess, where we can't call a spade anymore. We have to water down everything. And that ranges from social issues to the economy. And I think Trump is, I think people just in general, including on the Democrat side, and I think this is why you have so many Democrats and independents going over to Trump. People are just sick of political correctness because it's harming us.
I believe that too. I mean, going out amongst a group of people, I'm not saying go out and incite people, but going out, amongst in the public and being scared to say certain things, you should not, be scared to say certain things, as long as you're not going out with, saying racial slurs, trying to get the best of people and trying to make people angry. But you shouldn't, go out, for example, and, you shouldn't, you shouldn't be, I've seen many times where Muslims have, just been absolutely brutal to Christian people here in the streets of America, just because, Christians, they're out on the streets in New York and they're holding up, signs and all that, saying repent. I mean, this political correctness, where, you can't say this or you can't say that. You can't have a cross here. You can't, the schools want to get rid of this. They don't want to call it Christmas. They want holiday trees, all sorts of stuff. It is just mind blowing how we're dumbing down our society and simplifying our society so nobody's offended. It reminds me of this movie that I saw, and I don't remember the name of it, but it was in America where they pretty much made a law to make everybody equal. And they would put, for example, if you were extremely good looking, they would put something like over your face, I think, to make sure that, you weren't, given that advantage. And then if you were extremely smart, they would have this thing on your head that zapped your brain like every few seconds to make sure that you weren't getting too deep into thought. And it was just like, this is just absolutely crazy. It's like a parallel universe of we are coming very close to, a time where political correctness just takes over everything. And then you have this man run for president who's just like, I don't care. Yes, they're coming over. Yes, they're doing terrible things. Yes, these people are bad. Yes, these people are bad. Yes, these people are ripping us off. We have to do it. Not all of these people are terrible. not all the citizens are bad. Their government's smarter than our government, but that all of a sudden that makes him a bad guy, and he's unelectable. And I remember some of the same people that you and I talk to all the time said Trump wouldn't win even one state. By the time January came around in February, he would have been just nothing. And look at Trump now. They are literally shivering in their boots trying to figure a way out of a Trump nomination and a Trump presidency. They're even going as far as to go for Hillary. And when they say never Trump, they are saying that they are for Hillary regardless of what they say, because a vote, when you vote not for Trump, you're voting for Hillary regardless if it's third party or you don't vote at all, because you're letting your country go to a liberal progressive, a third term of Barack Obama, and we cannot have that. That will be the end of America, just as we know it.
Right, and I think you said it better than I could have. I think there are also a lot of people like you and I, and I'll include my friend Matt Dallas into this category too, where, to be honest, I wasn't really expecting, Trump to go that far either. And, I really didn't want him to be the nominee either at first, because I recognized that he has some issues. But, once, like about 2 or 3 weeks ago, when I saw, that it was looking more and more like Trump was becoming the nominee. And I think this is where Matt was. And I think I don't really know if this is the case for you. I'll let you answer. But for me personally, and for a lot of other people I know, it was kind of, okay, well, I wasn't for Trump before, but I'm willing to get on this train now because I think it's the most sustainable option. And, even I was watching an interview last night with Trump's wife, Melania, I think is how you properly pronounce her name. And, the one thing I'll say about Melania, and this is the one thing that has kind of been bugging me about some of the other conservatives like Glenn Beck and Mark Levin, is people brought up the fact that she posed nude for like GQ Europe or something like that. And I'm like, what does that have to do with anything?
Well,
and I was watching an interview with her, and it was all about how she came over to this country from Russia right after the Cold War, but she did it legally. She escaped a horrible place, but she came over to the country illegally, and she talked, I think, in this interview a lot about how the U.S. is heading towards where Europe was, 30, 40 years ago, which is not a good place to be.
And
at the very least.
And when I call some of these people politically correct, they'll say, no, we just have manners. I mean, no. When I call somebody politically correct, they are politically correct. Some of the people that I've argued with, they're absolutely full of themselves. They'll give these announcements and they think, I am officially supporting, for the third time, this person. And this is the reason why. And they'll give a litany of reasons why they're supporting this person. They'll be like, they act like they have so much weight. And you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
For example, there's this one specific person, not going to name any names, who literally 2 days ago said, I will not compromise my principles. I will not vote for Trump, or I will not vote for Cruz. No way. Now he has Cruz as like his cover photo, and he's saying, we absolutely have to stop Trump. I am glad to support a courageous conservative like Ted Cruz. And I'm not going to argue Ted Cruz is a courageous conservative, but I mean, it just aggravates me. These are people full of themselves, and it really aggravates me. They think their opinion matters so much, and your opinion does matter to a certain extent, but this guy goes and professionally like puts out posts and does blogs, and that's fine, that's great. But like it's like he's very full of himself and he's not open minded, and he thinks, well, if you got an opposing view, then you're like some like knuckle dragger. Like you don't equate to him. And I mean, you'll figure out who I'm talking about. But I don't. It's just those people really bother me. It's just like they'll be like, we cannot support, somebody who demeans women and talks about this group of people. I mean, when they know clearly that was not the case, they know clearly 90% of the accusations were not true that they stated, but they want to say something and they want to embolden it to make it like they're standing on principle. And these people are the worst attention getters there is. I mean, right. At the same time, this person was calling out another young conservative who was scamming tons of people out of thousands of dollars. This guy is all of a sudden, in agreement with that guy that he was talking trash about to come against me because I was calling both of them out. And then so they come together and all of a sudden they're like best buds teaming up on me. Oh, I never thought I'd say this. I'm in agreement with him, blah, blah, blah. These people just they're full of themselves. I mean,
well, some people were a little surprised because they, what, as you and I alluded to earlier, you criticized me pretty harshly on Rubio, and a lot of people, when I told them, well, not a lot of people, but some people, when I told them I was having you on the show, they were like, wait, didn't he just chew you out for supporting Rubio? And I'm like, yeah, but I want to have him on to know why. I'm like, I'm not opposed from having, people who have opposing
look, I think we are probably in agreement with everything almost. We agree. I disagreed with Rubio because I think immigration is an important issue, and that he was weak on immigration, and I think, or he was not. That wasn't his strongest suit. I wouldn't say weak,
right?
But, and I think that's a critical issue because we have things such as Social Security and hospitals and all these public benefits that they're able to get on, or they will be able to get on, and we will not have a way to pay for them because immigration directly affects, the government spending and Social Security. And I think that being weak on immigration disqualifies somebody as a candidate. And that's why I was harsh to Marco Rubio. I loved him. I talked to him at CPAC for a couple minutes, and he is a great, phenomenal guy. But I did not want him to be president. And I gave you a lot of, hard time for that because I knew that you were smarter than that. And I'm not saying that he's, a bad choice for president out of all what we have now. He would be better than Hillary Clinton and Bernie Sanders, and he would be better than probably half of the Republican field that we had. But I knew, but just based on, I was actually expecting you to go for Cruz just based on how conservative you are.
Yeah. Well, actually, I would actually like to kind of explain why I supported Rubio, why I didn't support Cruz, because this is the other thing with Facebook, and this is why I wanted to have you on the show. I think when it comes to social media, whether it be Twitter or Facebook posts, things tend to get really jumbled up. So the reason why I liked Rubio is, okay, he's weak on immigration. I agree with you that immigration is a major point, but I don't think it's a disqualifier.
Yeah. Okay.
Especially not in this election. If believe me, if it weren't Hillary or Bernie running, I wouldn't have supported Rubio. But this is the other thing is Rubio and Cruz both have a 98% rating with the American Conservative Union, and the advantage that Rubio has over Cruz that I liked that unfortunately we no longer have is Cruz Cruz seems more divisive. He seems a little standoffish in the Senate, and he's branded himself as like the Tea Party savior.
Yeah,
and he pretends to be a really nice guy, but he's really, I think he's sneaky. Trump. The thing that I like about Trump is kind of an asshole, but he doesn't really deny that he's a jerk either. Rubio, I do think that immigration was his biggest weak point, but I think that he was kind of a fair compromise. Plus, I think the fact that, I mean, I don't want to generalize, but I think the fact that it's clear that he's Cuban, I think kind of that racial, I think that would have helped a lot with defeating Hillary, who was basically, a redneck, white person who's just, she's elitist, more so.
Look, I think
Rubio
if Rubio would have stayed away from the Gang of Eight, and Rubio would have stayed away from the amnesty bill, Rubio would be the nominee right now. I think so, because I believe that was the only thing stopping him. Because you notice Ted Cruz would always go after Rubio, and the number one thing would be amnesty. He would get up there and he'd say, "I fought amnesty. I fought the Rubio Schumer bill, and somebody on this stage was the author of it." I mean, and he'll sit there and say that, and that was the biggest problem for Rubio was immigration. Rubio could have easily, if he just stayed away from the Gang of Eight, Rubio would be the nominee. He would have averted a Trump entering the race. I think so, and I think Rubio would probably be our next president. But the Gang of Eight is what killed him, because immigration is the third to fourth biggest issue that Republican voters are voting on. And that was why Rubio was doing so much worse than people expected, in the very beginning.
Here's where I will fault Rubio in regards to, look, he made a mistake with the Gang of Eight, when he was a young senator. My whole thing was he screwed up on that. He can't change that.
Yeah.
So, here's where I do think he fall down. And I think you would agree with me. Rubio, the one thing that did kind of annoy me though is he never came out and said, "Look, this was a mistake. I recognize that it was a mistake," and he never properly addressed it. Had he addressed it and not tried to sidestep it, I think a lot of people would have been okay with him.
Yeah, I think the big problem for Rubio was that what you just said, he did not confront the issue. Rubio instead tried to say Cruz was for amnesty, and we all knew that wasn't true. And what Cruz put was an amendment in there that would take citizenship off the table, and that's not amnesty.
Right.
But the problem with Rubio, what I think killed him officially, his campaign, was that Rubio never ruled out citizenship even when he was running. He said, "Look, we can't tell these people that they eventually can't get citizenship." He never ruled out. I don't think I've ever heard him rule out citizenship completely. I don't know, if he did. I may be completely wrong on that, but I just think had he never got involved with Schumer and, and Graham and all of them, I think he would have been our nominee, and I think he would probably beat Hillary Clinton probably by 6 to 10 points. I just think
absolutely.
I just think he's that good of a candidate, that good of a speaker. But I did not trust him on immigration. And what I noticed about Rubio is had he owned up to immigration, I probably would have liked him and possibly would have voted for him because I would have known because he came off as really shady by just not owning up to it instead of saying, okay, it was Cruz that was for amnesty, not me. That I looked at that and I laughed. I said, I don't really like Cruz as my favorite, but I know for a fact that Cruz was against amnesty, and I know that you're telling a flat out lie, especially when my senator Jeff Sessions is siding with Cruz on that. Because I know Jeff Sessions is a trustworthy senator, especially when it comes to immigration. And I know trustworthy senator sounds like an oxymoron, but Jeff Sessions is a trustworthy senator. And when, it's just Rubio lost a lot of credibility, and I felt like, well, if I can't trust him here, I can't trust him there. He comes off really shady, like somebody that's always, trying to compromise, and that's just it just didn't add up for me. It was just like I was losing faith in Rubio, and at the end of the day, if he was a nominee, I would have supported him. But it was just I started opposing him, especially because the change of tone he had after Jeb Bush dropped out, and there was a debate, and he started talking about the hands of Donald Trump. And I know Donald Trump does all that stuff. We expect that, but this is what made. Sorry, I'm sick or whatever. But this is what made Marco Rubio unique, was his ability to unify people and his ability to walk the fine line of establishment Republicans and conservatives. But that all went to the wayside after he started attacking Trump on a personal level, and it was just in for his campaign.
Well, on that note, I kind of have mixed feelings. I get what you're saying about that, but there was also a large constituency of Republicans and conservatives, namely Ben Shapiro over at Daily Wire, who were saying that Rubio and Cruz needed to attack Trump, that they needed to get dirty and kind of go down to Trump's level. And so, Rubio did with Donald, and then a lot of these same people were saying, oh, well, we can't have them do that. So, I think it was a damned if you do, damned if you don't type of scenario. Yeah. So that's just me.
Yeah. I can't say that I disagree with you. I mean, the whole campaign, it was a mess. The only one person that I really despised out of this whole election cycle on the Republican side was Jeb Bush. I really just disliked the guy.
It's interesting though. I think our ultimate problem when it boils down to is we had too many candidates to begin with. We had over 17, and some of them it was like, really, why are you even here? Carly Fiorina. I like Carly Fiorina, but I was kind of like, yeah, you're not going to be in here for that long. Same with people like Scott Walker and.
I was going to say that. I was going to say, I think Scott Walker is a very young guy. He's still got a lot to accomplish in Wisconsin. I feel like he really ruined his political future. He got up there. He was a front runner. He just spent all of his money and went after Donald Trump and then just collapsed. I mean, I felt like he ran too early. I felt Bobby Jindal ran. I mean, Bobby Jindal's still a young guy. Bobby Jindal should actually run for David Vitter's Senate seat. I feel like, you have all these young people that just wanted to get in there. And I even think Cruz running was a mistake. But looking back at 2010, I remember watching the election and watching Marco Rubio's victory speech. I said, I think this guy will probably run for president one day. He kind of reminded me of like a Republican version of Kennedy in a way, but he was so charismatic. But I think that we should have only had, it should have been more like a 2012 field where we have a set number of people and they all hold unique beliefs, um, but we had way too many people that pretty much agreed on like a large portion of things, and then it got to the point where it was just like, let's talk bad about Trump, and then Cruz was like, okay, I'm going after Rubio. Rubio was like, I'm going after Cruz. Trump was going after Bush, and Trump was basically bullying Bush, and Bush was just going after Trump, and it was just this huge cachet of mess, and it became mudslinging instead of policy talk, and it was awful.
If you want, it's interesting that you bring up Trump versus Bush, because I think that was like why a lot of people actually got onto the Trump train, is because he was actually trashing Jeb, and let's face it, and my stepdad actually brought up a good thing too, which is that the Republican Party wasted their money with Bush. They spent like $10 million on his campaign.
Yeah, I mean, the person that ran his super PAC, Right to Rise, they raised $100 million and they blew it. And Jeb Bush didn't win a single state, and he did poorly. That person should be fired from everything and should never be allowed to run anything in politics again. Because spending $100 million with a high-profile candidate with a very prominent last name, and you're not even able to get past 10% in most of the states they competed in, that's pathetic. $100 million. I remember Jeb Bush, before he announced raising hundreds, or not hundreds, but tens of millions of dollars for Right to Rise, and then they just blow all that on 3 or 4 states. Jeb Bush was polling 4th place in Florida. Florida was like 2 months away, and he's behind Cruz, Trump, and Rubio in Florida. I'm just thinking, what is this guy doing? I mean, that's why I like Trump, is because he was, I just despise, I really said, we cannot put a Bush up there. We cannot let our next president be a Bush. That shows that we have nothing to offer. The last 3 Republican presidents were all Bushes.
Yeah, and to your point with the fact that Bush had a crappy campaign manager, I think that was part of it, but I don't think it would have mattered if he had the best campaign manager in the world, quite honestly. I think people were just so sick of the last name Bush that I just don't think people would have gone for him anyway. And I think that's the other big problem that the Republican Party has, is rather than really kind of really they are out of touch. I hate to say it, but as far as the establishment goes, like, I don't think it takes a certified genius. You and I are pretty politically adept, but I think even someone who probably like my aunt and uncle, who aren't as politically inclined, I think even those people know that, obviously Bush would be a poor choice for the Republican Party. So, okay, so we're back, and you were saying?
Yeah, I don't think, Jeb Bush could have raised, $1 billion and he still wouldn't have done it. But it was just, his campaign was still poorly managed. His super PAC was still poorly managed. He could have performed better. I don't think he would have won, but I was very just suspicious. I didn't want another Bush. I knew that the party would push him. And I knew they were going to push either Christie or Bush. And I was very shocked when Christie came out and endorsed Trump. But for the most part, I'm glad that Christie came out and endorsed Trump, as well as Rick Scott and other prominent governors such as Paul LePage from Maine, and Jan Brewer, the former governor of Arizona, and of course Sarah Palin, the former governor of Alaska.
Yeah, I was very glad to hear that as well. So, well, anyway, Isaiah, we've had a great conversation. Any other comments you would like to make about this election?
Well, sure. I would just like to make the case to the Never Trump people that this election is not an election that we can just lose and then in 4 years come back and say we want to redo and we want a better candidate. This is a very important election. This election represents what America will look like 10, 20, or 30 years down the road because we have a tremendous debt and deficit problem. We have to tackle this debt crisis. We can't continue like this. Hillary Clinton, by going on the Never Trump train, you're ensuring a Hillary Clinton victory. You're ensuring multi-trillion-dollar budgets that will just continually add on to our debt, which eventually we'll have to pay the piper, and we'll end up in the situation that Greece has ended up in. Except we won't get a bailout because there's no one here to bail us out. We need somebody that will get in there and lead from the front, and is not going to try to get behind other people and try to just have these backwards foreign policy thinking. We need somebody that will get up there and make deals that will benefit America. And I don't believe that for 1 second Donald Trump would get up there and make a deal that would harm America or that would put American workers second and the foreign worker first. We need to rally behind whoever the nominee is, whether it's Ted Cruz or Donald Trump, and we need to unite to defeat Hillary Clinton in November, because if we don't, the results of her presidency will be so disastrous that America will not withstand, and America will not be the same country it was after 4 years of Hillary Clinton. So thank you for letting me come on to your show. We've had a very fruitful discussion. I would love to come on your show more often because, it's just awesome getting to talk to you. You have a great show. I listen in every once in a while. And when I do, I get a lot of, knowledge and wisdom and insight from it because, you yourself, you're up front and close, just studying this and in depth with it. So thank you for having me on your show. I appreciate it. And this is something that I look forward to more often. And I look forward to working with people uniting against Hillary Clinton and uniting with the Republican nominee to fix this country and to face these massive problems that we have. So thank you for having me on, Sam.
Oh, you're welcome. Anytime. Real quick, where can we find you at if you want to plug any thing real quick?
You can find me on my Facebook, Isaiah Pyritz. That is ISAIAH PYRITZ. And
are you contributing anywhere currently?
I have not contributed in a while, but you can find some of my articles where I have written at CalgarNation.com. I am a good friend of Caden Calgar, and I support him in his efforts. And every once in a while, I do write articles for him, and when I do, I post them on my Facebook page. And they're usually very sourceful and informative articles. They're based on facts, and we aim at getting the facts out. I am getting the facts out and making sure that the people that read, get knowledge out of the article. And I want to inform them, and I don't try to bias it a certain way. I want to help this country. I want to inform people so they can make the right decision when they go out and vote. And I want people to understand how important this election is.
Excellent, man. All right. I want to thank you for coming on again. And folks, I want to thank you for listening. It's been a bit of a long show today. The interview took up the entire show, but that's okay. It was a very good discussion. So I want to thank you all for listening. And we'll see you next time on the Whitfield Analysis.